Welcome back. The recent unrest in KZN and Gauteng has had a devastating impact on businesses and a number of sectors. The effects are beginning to be felt on the ground. Food and fuel shortages are now a reality for many in parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Agri SA Executive Director Christo has also added his voice, warning of growing food insecurity, and he joins us now. Mr. van der Rheede, thank you very much. We appreciate your availability and for taking the time to speak to us. So I want to start off by talking about the impact of recent looting on the agri sector, not only in KZN but surrounding areas as well. We saw footage of crops being set alight, of livestock being looted. We saw trucks transporting produce having to dump that produce because of the supply chain disruptions. Have you, as Agri SA, been able to quantify the impact of just this last week's unrest on the agri sector at large?
Unfortunately not. We still await figures from our members out there, and we will be able to give a consolidated picture at a later stage. But what I want to emphasize is that farming is a high-risk business. Farmers produce food in the hope that they will be able to get it to a point of sale or a market, and if they can't do that, in other words, then they will lose the money that they've invested into producing a specific product. So the losses will be seriously high, and we will at a later stage be able to quantify it. But yes, the farming community in KZN went through a very traumatic experience, and one just hope and pray it will not happen again.
The losses to the agri sector are also cumulative. You've been describing there the impact of these kinds of events and unrest on farmers. Many developing farmers and even successful commercial farmers do not necessarily have the financial cushion to recover from one season of crops damaged or livestock theft. So how is that, do you think, going to impact the security of the agri sector in KZN specifically over the next year or two?
Many farmers, including small-scale farmers, your commercial farmers, and bigger corporates, for example, your big poultry companies, have suffered tremendous losses. And that's why there was an appeal from all farmers, regardless of whether they're black or white or any other color, to ask government for immediate intervention. We've seen terrible pictures of malls being looted and some malls being burned down to the ground, and we've seen warehouses being looted and so forth. And all of these things happen within the urban areas. But we've seen very little footage and very little focus on what has actually happened in rural areas. And that's where the big trauma was experienced, and we know for a fact that many towns have completely lost their business centers. There's absolutely no shops, nothing left for those communities. So the agriculture sector in a broader sense is in dire straits. And yes, some farmers will be able to pick up the pieces, and they've got insurance, they've got other assistance, and yes, they will be able to continue after a couple of weeks or even months to go back to normal. But your smaller farmers, many of them who started out now recently and who got massive loans with financial institutions and who in many ways do not even have the necessary insurances in place, I'm not sure whether those farmers will be able to overcome the challenges that they are currently facing.
Let's talk about the imminent food shortages being experienced. We know that for many types of goods, that's purely resultant from supply chain, and then as soon as supply chain is reinstated, those goods will once again be available. But let's talk more specifically about meat, dairy and fresh produce coming from South African farmers, in other words, not processed or prepackaged goods. What is the availability looking like? Are we expecting to see a return to normal within a couple of days, or an extended period of food insecurity?
I want to emphasize that South Africa is in a very fortunate position in that we've got a very sophisticated agriculture system, especially the commercial system. That system provides food on a daily basis, whether it's fresh fruit or processed food, and you can go into any shop. The shelves are normally stocked. But what has happened in KZN, the entire logistics network came to a standstill. So it was very difficult to get food into the province, and even for exporters. Remember now we're in the middle of the citrus export season. It was difficult for them to get anything into the harbour. That was now last week. But Agri SA, together with other stakeholders, have engaged with our cabinet ministers, and I must really say and commend them for their swift action. They've opened up the N3, which is the main road to get things into KZN and out of KZN. This transit have opened up the harbour and railway lines, and many businesses have started to operate. Yes, it will take a couple of weeks, but the biggest challenge obviously is the areas where there are no shops left. And for that we have suggested the idea that temporary structures be erected so that shops then can make food available to communities and sell food also in those temporary structures so that people just have food available for their daily consumption.
That's, of course, not only important for those who are consuming food, but for farmers themselves. They desperately need access to market in order to be able to turn the produce into a profit.
Indeed, because remember now, you spend a lot of money on inputs. If you a vegetable grower, you must buy seed, you must buy fertilizer, you must buy diesel, you must pay your labor. So there's a lot of money that you invest before you have that fruit or vegetable ready for the picking. Once that is done, you have to now get it on a truck, and that truck needs to take it either to a fresh produce market or to a shop. And that's why we have also called on government to open up the fresh produce market. And we were very fortunate that that market has opened on Friday. And as you know, many hawkers or informal traders, they frequent the fresh produce market in their attempt to buy fresh fruit and vegetables, and then they take it to the townships to have it sold there. So all of these things are back into operation. But if you cannot get your fresh produce to a market, like we've seen, dairy farmers, for example, then you have to discard of it. I know farmers that have contacted me, they said they've lost, just from previous Friday to Sunday, they've lost approximately 3 million rand due to the fact that they couldn't deliver their tomatoes and other fresh produce and vegetables to the markets in KZN. And that's a massive loss for a farmer.
Well, thank you very much for your insights into the broader impact of this unrest on the agri sector. That was Christo, Executive Director of Agri SA.